Hi, this is Lester Ramos, and this is going to be a quick ethical overview of open source software and proprietary software. You might have turned on the news lately only to hear about the ongoing Apple versus FBI case and ask, why is this important? Well, software is everywhere around us, and it's becoming the fundamental building block of human interaction and activity. The Apple versus FBI case is arguing over privacy issues, which is a big topic when discussing software ethics. And it's such a big deal because software is influencing our society, so we must set up an ethical standard for software. The development of software is moving our civilization forward. We can all agree that we have to set up a foundation for this standard. The community has defined ethics as follows. It must contribute to society and human well being. Software must avoid harm to others, be honest and trustworthy, give proper credit for intellectual property, respect the privacy of others, and honor confidentially. These are going to be the set of ethical standards that we're going to be looking at moving forward in our presentation. So, what is open source software? In the 1950s and 1960s, computer operating software and compilers were delivered as a part of hardware purchases without separate fees. At this time, source code, the human readable form of software, was generally distributed, with the software providing the ability to fix bugs or add new functions. Universities, very tied into software, were the early adopters of computing technology. Many of the modifications developed by universities were openly shared to keep the academic principle of sharing knowledge, and organizations sprung up to facilitate sharing. So, open source software is software that is free of charge, can be used for nonprofit or commercial development, and has open access to the source code. The community of open source software developers believe that software heavily contributes to the society. Therefore, it needs to be accessible to all. One of the leaders of the movement, Richard Stallman, started the movement around the 1960s, and he is the current leader and producer of the GNU project. Because of the accessibility of open source software, its community has grown over the last few years. The open source community takes credit for the Linux operating systems, Apache web server, Node.js, libgdx, and a ton of other web frameworks and programming tools. Why do people prefer using open source software? Many people prefer open source software because they have more control over that kind of software. They can examine the code to make sure it's not doing anything they don't want it to do. They can change parts of it they don't like. Users who aren't programmers also benefit from open source software because they can use this software for any purpose they wish, not merely the way someone else thinks it should. Others like open source software because it helps them become better programmers. Because open source code is publicly accessible, students can learn to make better software by studying what others have written, and they can also share their work with others, inviting comments and critique. Some people prefer open source software because they consider it more secure and stable than proprietary software. Because anyone that can view and modify open source software, someone might spot and correct errors or omissions that a program's original authors might have missed. And because so many programmers can work on a piece of open source software without asking for permission, open source software is generally fixed, updated, and upgraded quickly. But that's not always the case. We'll talk about this more. So, what are the unethical issues that open source software is facing? An ethical issue around open source software is that personal itch drives development. We agreed that software is pushing and moving our society forward, but in open source software, when a developer or maintainer loses interest in their project, it is no longer maintained unless other developers keep the project alive. But usually that's not the case. An example of this was the issues behind Express.js, a JavaScript Node.js front-end web framework. The creator and main developer of Express.js gave up full responsibility to a group of developers in the community. As a result, the project was not maintained for months and eventually given up to another group of programmers to maintain. which leads us to another issue called the many hands issues. Open source software gets worked on by many programmers, and when bugs arise, it's tough to see who created the bug or who is appointed to fix these bugs. Open source projects usually lack communication to keep the public informed about the release dates or when or who will fix these bugs. When software is developed in an open source model, as early as the launch of the conceptual design in the open source project, issues can arise as to who is the owner of the work. When a wide range of hands touch the open source code, ownership and rights in the code can become very blurred. Another issue with open source software is security. Contributors of open source projects find security holes and often report them and fix these issues, but at other times, hackers can find these security holes and use them to harm other users, which is unethical. One of the biggest issues with open source software is ownership. Open source developers have had issues in the past with copyright licensing. There has been occasions where open source code has been used to develop a business and open source developers have gotten upset about it. A recent issue occurred when open source developer Azure Oclure unpublished 250 of his Node.js modules because he named one of his modules Kick, which is the same name as an instant messaging app called Kick. The company attracted a bunch of lawyers and contacted the NPM managers and forced them to change the name. As a result, the programmer got mad and withdrew 250 of his modules that many other programs and projects depend on. So you can see that during some events, questions arise in open source development as some ethical standards aren't met. So, what is proprietary software? Proprietary software is any software that doesn't meet open source criteria. It is usually sold for monetary value, is closed source, and cannot be shared among others. Proprietary software emerged when IBM partnered with Microsoft and began to charge for machines with closed source software.